Thank you very much, Louise. Hello, everyone, and welcome to OTF Connects. Thank you so much for giving of your own time to join us tonight. It's wonderful to have so many of you from across the province. Good representation from the north. Thank you for joining us. And also, it's wonderful to have new teachers here tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome Jeff Pellich, who will be facilitating tonight's webinar on gaming for literacy. This is the second webinar that Jeff has facilitated for OTF Connects. Jeff is a very passionate educator who brings much knowledge and creative ideas to share with us tonight. So welcome, Jeff. I will pass the mic over to you.
Well, thank you. So I'm excited to be here again. I got to tell you that countdown as the session is starting up is very freaky for a presenter. Usually you can see a clock, you can see people coming in, but the countdown clock before the show starts really throws me for a loop. So, like has been said, my name is Jeff. I'm a teacher in the Waterloo Region District School Board. I'm really lucky. I kind of have a really interesting job. I teach, it's not my, okay, I can't watch the chat. I got to remember that. I have an interesting job. I teach in a behavior program, and I'm really lucky because I only have 8 students, and I have a classroom budget. So it's allowed me to kind of, I don't want to say be on cutting edge, but kind of break the rules a little bit as I've moved through my career. So I've been in the behavior program for 8 years, and because of having a budget, I was able to buy iPads when they first came out, and I'm able to buy some of the fun little toys that come out. And I was able to kind of play and experiment with some different apps. And what I found one year is that video games are really fun for my kids. And as I'll explain a little bit later, some of the students didn't always connect to learning, but all of a sudden when you threw a video game in front of them, they did. So this presentation, Gaming for Literacy, is coming from, it's kind of an extension and digging a little bit deeper about my ideas for my first session, which was called Ripping It Up. And I encourage you to go back and take a view of that one if you can at some time. And I kind of introduce the ideas about research around vulnerable students and how to engage some of those really tough kids in learning. And we talked a lot about and had some really challenging discussions about boy learners and if boys learn differently than girls and what all that means to us in the classroom. And it really kind of was great, but one thing that we weren't able to do was spend a lot of time actually playing. And so my hope is that today we can talk specifically about literacy, but then at the end, we're going to have a fairly big chunk of time where you'll be able to go and actually play one of the games that I talk a lot about, and hopefully give you some of the ideas and skills that you're going to really enjoy, and then hopefully you'll go back and play them yourself at some point. So, to start off, what I want you to do is take a look at the picture on this slide. And there's going to be 3 slides. Each one has a different picture. And just to get our mind thinking creatively, kind of put us in the place of video games and everything else, I want you to use the photo to create a 1 or 2 sentence story starter. And what you can do is just around the outside, take the text tool and just type in that story starter. And I'll give you about a minute per slide to do that, and feel free to dump it on the picture if you want to. Don't worry about destroying the look of the picture, but come up with something that could be a story starter for this.
While people are thinking about that, I'll just remind everyone, in case you missed that beginning part, the text tool is the 4th tool from the top of that little vertical strip at the left-hand side of your whiteboard. And you'll notice when you select that text tool as well, another little tool strip will pop up, a horizontal one below that. You can actually change the size and color of your font.
Thank you, Louise. Very fancy. So I'll give you another about 30 seconds or so. And this is definitely an activity that many of us have done using pictures, and it's not I wouldn't say it's rocket science necessarily, and many of us have probably done this with books and picture books where you show the picture and come up with a little story starter. What I'll say is that many vulnerable students, when you only give them a sentence to write, they actually really buy into it because they know it's an achievable goal. It's something that they can do without too much effort, and the end product it's kind of like a level playing field. They all kind of look the same, no matter what your skill level is, no matter what grade level you're working at. So just finish off your last little thought. I'm going to move it in a couple seconds here. And awesome, so there's some really good ones here. Way back in time, hundreds of years ago, ... So take a quick look at those if you haven't had a chance yet. And don't worry, if you didn't get a chance to totally complete it, don't feel like you need to rush. Feel free to look at some of the different ones and see what you have. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one. And you can also add, yeah, awesome, also add it to the chat itself. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, so don't be scared if all of a sudden the page turns. Let's see what we can do with this one. So again, add your text along the outside. And maybe Louise, if you wouldn't mind putting up like a 45-second timer, just so that we know how much time we have. Oh, there's that countdown clock. Now you'll all experience what I experienced at the beginning. And so then at the end of the timer, feel free to just put the rest in the comments, or I'll leave it on for about 15 more seconds just so you can take a look at what other people have written. Okay, I'm going to switch it in 3 seconds. And here we go. Here's the last one. Definitely a different photo. Same idea, Janet. Or sorry, Louise, if you wouldn't mind doing the 45-second timer to freak everyone out. I only had 45 seconds to make it to the top of the church. Awesome. I love it. Okay, so just finish what you're typing, and then feel free to read through what some of our people have posted. And in about 10 seconds, I'm going to move us on. So, all of these photos have come from a game, and I say game in quotation marks, called Epic Citadel. And I'm really disappointed because about a year ago there was an online demo of this that I could have actually taken you to and let you take a look at. But what I want you to do is, I believe, I'm just going to post, I have a link to a short little video of what this looks like, because it's unbelievable, the quality. Oh great, you got it. unbelievable, the quality. The link is in the chat box off to the side. Feel free to take a look at that video. And I'm not sure if Louise is going to post that in the actual the website. There we go. You're awesome, Louise.
Okay, folks, so I am going to...
And the game itself really is unusual because it doesn't have any characters. There's absolutely no plot. And really all you do is walk around the world, this castle, this citadel that is in the game. And don't feel like you need to watch the whole video or that, and don't feel like, definitely just fast forward through some different parts to see the graphics and what it looks like, because it's pretty astounding, the quality and the level of detail that's in this world. And instead of just showing a picture, I'm assuming there's sound to the video. Yeah, there's sound to the video. Hit enter, and then are we able to mute the sound, Louise?
Sadly, no. That's independent on everybody's system. So if they mute the sound for the video, they will also mute you. However,
watching it on theirs. But
exactly.
the students can actually manipulate and walk around this world on their device or on mostly on the device that they're using, and then they can take screenshots of these different spots. And using some of those story starters that we just did, they can actually use screenshots and either put them into a Google slideshow, where they are able to then post the text down below. I've had students take screenshots of this game, different areas in the epic citadel, and put it into one of the book creators. And that way they can add different types of fancy text. They could even add some characters if they wanted by using bit strips and cutting and pasting and that kind of thing. Or finally, one that we've experimented with once was using an iPad screen recorder. So if you feel technically savvy, using a screen recorder, or an app I use called Reflector, and actually take video of the Citadel and then add their story as narration or text on the screen. So there's a whole bunch of different options you can do with that to really bring that story to life. And it really shows us some of the different things that we can do now with some really cool apps and games that are out there and available for fairly inexpensive. I think that one is maybe $3 or $4 on the iTunes store. So I'm just going to, when you get a second, I'm going to start moving on here in the presentation. So we'll give you about another 30 seconds just to finish off that video. When you get back, if you wouldn't mind just giving me a yes in the little poll box up underneath your name. So clicking the check mark to let me know that you are back and ready to move on. Awesome. If it shows up for free on your iPhone, that's even better. I remember at one point there was a cost to it, but if it's free, that's even better. I agree, Jennifer. There's so many different options you could do with this, and so many different cool little things. Yeah, actually, I believe it is available as a PC game, and I believe you could download it as a Mac version too, but it isn't available on the Chromebook. There used to be an online version, but it's not available anymore. And there should be an Android version for it also. So again, once you get back to the Blackboard Collaborative, if you wouldn't mind just giving me a little check mark, a little yes off to the left-hand side of the screen. That way I know that I can continue on. Perfect. So it looks like most people are coming back now. So I'm going to move on a little bit here. So I'm just going to clear those up. So here's just some of the ideas that I was talking about. Again, taking screenshots is really easy on many devices. So using that to your advantage and being able to walk through and take those screenshots is really kind of cool. It gives you them the art for picture books or presentations or whatever else. So a little quick introduction to some of the things now that we've got our head thinking about video games. I'm going to spend some time talking, just giving you a very quick introduction to my class, my experience in gaming. And again, if you want more, feel free to go back to the Ripping It Up presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about why use gaming, the supporting research, and preparing for those tough questions. I often find, and I often get questions about, well, how do you use this video game, or why do you think that's okay to use a video game in your classroom? And having some of the background supporting knowledge, like what actual educational research says about it, is great to put into your arsenal so that you know how to defend what you're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about Video Games 101 and media literacy. So I kind of had when I said gaming for literacy, not only did I have like using video games to teach reading and writing, but also how to include video games in your media literacy. Because it's one of the types of media that the majority of our students are using, and we don't really do a good job talking about it and deconstructing it like we do other things like radio commercials and TV and movies. We're not comfortable with video games, so we avoid it. And last but not least, we're going to play Machinarium, and we'll discuss about how we can use that in our classroom. Because really, by the end of tonight, it would be great if you had those theories. You knew the benefits of gaming in the classroom. You were able to learn a little bit about what gaming looks like today. Some of us may have dabbled in it in the past, but may not know exactly what it is today and what it looks like and how to include it in media literacy. And last but not least, how to play, explore, and learn, and hopefully repeat. One of the biggest things people say to me is, how do you have time to do this? Well, I force myself to do it sometimes. And I'm not a big fan. I'm not a huge gamer. I like video games. I use them with my son. I use them in my classroom. But I wouldn't say I spend hours playing video games. I do the same as I would with a video. I sit down and I will watch it, preview it, before I use it with my students. And sometimes I get a little addicted to it, sometimes. So first, just so I have an idea of who we are working with here today, I want you to use the poll button off to the side. And so in a second, that yes/no little check mark is going to change to an A. There it is, Louise, you rock. What are your techno abilities? So A, you're very skilled. B, you're good. C, I manage. D, yikes. Just so I have an idea of what we're working with here. Fantastic. Looks like we got some good techno people here tonight. That's nice. And then the next question. Here's where we really find out some stuff. What's your gaming ability? So A, you're a superstar, meaning you play games in your personal life, you play games in the classroom. B, yeah, you play, but you haven't really gone into the classroom with them yet. C, I've played, but I don't know much anymore. You played when you were a kid. Or D, you're a noob, meaning, yeah, you're totally new to this. We have some A's and we have some B's. Awesome. So some of you that are saying you're an A, at times you may be totally bored of what I'm saying and would like to jump in, and I would love that. Minecraft rocks my grade 3 world. Beautiful. And there will definitely be an opportunity where I'm going to want you to share some of those things, because those experiences are huge and allows us to really kind of come together with our geekiness around video games. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about my class and who I am. So as I mentioned, I'm in the grade 7-8 classroom for students with anxiety and behavior concerns. I have 8 students and 2 child youth workers, so I'm really lucky to have lots of support. I also have a budget, which is a huge plus, to buy all those fun apps and games. And sometimes I'll even I have the money to spend $40, $50 on a game to play on the Xbox, or a game to put on the computer and project. So I'm pretty lucky that way. I recently just finished my Master's of Education, and I did a thesis that looked at the elementary school experience of young men who became criminalized. And so I've developed this huge passion for trying to figure out what it is about school and elementary school in particular that pushes kids down a school-to-prison pipeline, or just makes them vulnerable, makes them struggle, and how we can do a better job working with them. And needless to say, many of those students that I spoke to really struggled with engagement. That was the big thing they talked about. And so I have found that video games can help. And my students, this boy in the picture here, that's one of my students, not literally, but totally could be one of my students. Kind of the odd one out, the one that stands out in the picture as being a little bit different. They all have to have some type of mental health disability and some different learning needs to come to my room. They've been involved in other behavior programs. They must be involved in with a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And they come to me with a lot of baggage. And immediately the thing that really comes out very clearly at the beginning of every year is that school has not worked for them. And learning is definitely scary for them. And we often hear them called at-risk students. But I always like to show this slide to kind of present it as, you know what, there is hope for these kids. And one researcher talked about, instead of going from at risk, which is really negative and really kind of pathologizes them or makes them seem like there's no hope, putting them at promise, saying these students are at promise. We want them to reach the promise of a better life or a promise of everything, all the hope that we have for them. And sometimes I'll use vulnerable, because that's, if I went around saying my students are at promise, people wouldn't necessarily know what I'm talking about. So I still kind of go back to vulnerable being one of the ways I will describe my students. And we try to avoid this look, which we've seen so many times from students, not just boys, but from students who are struggling. Boredom, lack of engagement. They can't connect to the curriculum. They don't see themselves in what they're learning in the classroom. And because of that, they are socially, physically, emotionally different, or they just come across as angry or upset. And because of that, they're suspended more often. And in the Ripping It Up presentation, I talked a lot about the statistics related to boys and suspensions and crime and different mental health disorders, and they're huge. And so remembering that, keeping that in mind, it's a really good idea to find ways to make it work. And I talk a lot about boys because I often have mostly boys in my classroom. But let me be clear, caution, it's not just about boys, it's about finding ways to engage all students. And in previous years, and this year included, I do have had girls in my classroom, and they have shown a desire to and have become engaged in video games also. So it's not just about the boys. So why use it? Why do it? And there was a study in 2013 that looked at kindergarten to grade 8 teachers, and 74% of teachers in the US at this time were using video games or some type of digital game, they called it, in their practice, in their classroom. And it was a study by the Sesame Workshop. And they broke teachers down into 4 different categories. There was the dabbler, someone who just kind of dabbles, plays less comfortable, faces a lot of barriers. There's the players, the people who love games, but don't have the pedagogy to bring it into the classroom and still struggle, and they have those barriers when using video games. They're not able to do it effectively. There's the barrier busters, people who use it just because they want to push the envelope, challenge things. And last but not least, there's the naturals. So there's 34% of teachers who use video games are the naturals, people who play and teach it often, and it's not about the tool. It's about, and it's not innovation, it's about good teaching and what engages kids. And so we need to all kind of strive to be that. But let's be clear, video games are not perfect. And with any new technology and teaching strategy, and with anything that we use video games, we always start thinking about the bad things. We worry about a whole bunch of different issues that may come up. So let's get those out here. Let's bring those out right now. The person, the angry face at the top of the screen, represents angry parents, or represents your administrator, or represents a colleague, or could even be a student. In the box, in the text box, what I want you to do is, again, take the text tool and put some of the concerns that they might list. And if you're willing to share your story, please just raise your hand, and maybe there's something in particular where you've tried to use this before, or your experience when you first started using Minecraft, what the reception was, if it was embraced by the school community, or if there was challenges. So do that now, and we'll put about 90 seconds maybe on the timer for people to get all their concerns out onto the whiteboard there. It's really good to hear, Jen, that Math Consultant is mentioning it as playing Minecraft as being really good. I was at our board office a little while ago, and one of the consultants challenged me with using video games, and had mentioned that, oh, I know DreamWorks is really good for learning, but I don't think any other games have been proven to work. And fortunately, that's just not the case. But don't pay taxes so kids can play video games. I love it. Great, so the timer has gone off here, and I was looking at some of the comments. Does anyone want to or is willing to share, those of you that have used video games, what the reception has been, Minecraft or anything, or someone who hasn't because they have had these concerns come up, want to share an experience or a story? Don't be shy, people. No hands. Tumbleweeds. All right, no problem. I have to tell you, I was part of a webinar course once where the presenter would like literally call on people, and for some reason, because I'm chatty, she would always call on me, and so I'm not going to do that to you. Because sometimes I was in the washroom or not there, and that would be uncomfortable. So the next part is Louise will post, I believe Louise will post a link to YouTube for this video. James Paul G wrote a book about using video games. He's actually a linguist. He has his PhD in he's a linguist. I don't know what that is. But this video is a really good introduction about how good video games can be for learning. So once the link is there,
I'm just going to jump on for a second, Jeff. I'm going to put it in the web tour too.
Quickly throw it into.
And as soon as I drop the link in there, it's going to start playing with the sound. So here you go, folks.
And as the video is on, feel free to just chat about it in the box next to it. Is this going to come up today, Louise, or is this going to mess with us?
Sorry, what was that? I didn't hear you, Jeff. Let me just type here.
So it's totally okay, Louise, if you play the video, because we can just chat in the chat box. Or people can go to it on their own computer and just let me know with one of the chat boxes or the polling tool that they're back. It's not playing on my computer. Is it playing on anyone else's computer? Okay. So it looks like people are coming back now. James Paul G. actually wrote a really good book, which I recommend, that kind of expands on these ideas and goes a little bit deeper into some of his beliefs. I highly recommend it. Just waiting for the last couple people. Wait another about 10 seconds and we'll get moving for the sake of time. So as people are coming back, one of the things that James Paul G. really talks about a lot in his book and in some of the other videos you can find is principles of gaming. So what is it about games that make it so good for learning? And these are some of the things that I consider. This is kind of like the lens that I use. So when I'm playing a game to decide if I'm using it in my classroom, I think about how many of these different things come into play. So identity is the idea that students create the identity in the game. They become either the character or they create the character from ground up. So they're able to, he believes that they need to see value in what they're doing, and if they dig deep into this new identity through the video game, they're going to buy into it more. Interaction, this idea that books are passive. It's all in front of you, whereas games, you get to decide the routes that you're taking. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure book, but interactive, so it's fantastic. And then production. Yes, the game is created by somebody, but the choices that you make are you're being part of the production of this game. And then when you think about things like Minecraft, well, in Minecraft, you're building this world. You are immersing yourself in it, and you're the one that's creating these different the castles or whatever you're doing in Minecraft. Good video games encourage risk-taking. And the risk-taking, really, it lowers the consequence of failure. Because in video games, you can save the game and go back to a checkpoint. So they know, well, if I screw up, it's not game over. I can't continue on. I can actually go back to a checkpoint and move forward. And it's really funny because one of the academic things that kind of pops up here is my students, I have some students who are reading at a grade 1, grade 2 level in grade 7, 8. And in the past, if you asked them to read something out loud, they'd be really anxious. All of a sudden, you put a game on, if there's text on the screen, they're begging to read. Literally begging sometimes and wanting to today, if we have to take turns and draw numbers or something to decide who's going to read because they just get so into it. Customization, they can customize their learning environment. So if they don't want to start off at hard, they don't have to. They can go back to easy and work their way up. If they want to choose a player or a character that has special powers, they can do that. Customizing everything in their learning environment, they really buy into. Well-ordered problems. Problems are ordered in games that build on problems in the past. So you develop these skills as you move forward. And because of that, there's like this challenge in I can't say that word right now because I'm talking too fast, but this idea that in a level, you're playing a level and you're building up skills, consolidation, there we go, I can say it. You're building up your skills and all of a sudden, at the end, there's a boss and you have to use all of those skills to defeat the boss. So they have to take the things that they've learned and have become almost automatic and apply it to this new challenge. Just-in-time learning or on-demand learning, you learn things as you need it, as it's needed, not the other way around. Too often in textbooks, it's you learn it before, then you try it, not here. Pleasantly frustrating, this idea that games challenge you or bring you to a point of frustrations, but not so much that you give up. Now, I have to say, students in my class struggle with this, and it's one of those great opportunities to kind of talk about your frustration tolerance. And, you know, it's a video game. You shouldn't get upset by a video game. But again, it's a chance to teach those social skills. And then system thinking, where they're thinking about relationships, not just isolated events. So if there's a problem in the game, they have to think about all of the multidisciplinary types of things, not just language, not just math, but all of them together to try to solve a problem. Explore, think laterally, rethink goals. Again, it's this idea that you can't just rush through to get to the end. You have to apply everything, and you have to rethink your skills and start over and change what you've learned to adapt the situation. And again, performance before compliance, which is, again, this idea that unlike a textbook, you don't have to read it first. You actually are getting into it. So there's some other little research things. I'm going to zip through these slides so we stay on time. Students want to use video games. This is one of the big things because they really believe that it's going to improve their problem-solving skills. It's going to help them with subject knowledge. They think that video games are going, they recognize that learning can happen with video games. And it builds on intrinsic motivation. So they're playing the video games, they're learning, but it's not like a carrot and a stick thing. They're doing it because they want to. A perfect example of something he mentioned, James Paul G mentioned Civilizations. It's a super complex game. And like he said, most adults give up really quickly. My students, grade 7, 8, all different academic levels, will spend 2 months playing this game and learning about applying our knowledge of Canadian history to nation, where we're trying to build up our nation and trying to build different resources and everything. It's amazing what they can learn. And there's no fighting to learn history. It's phenomenal. And then when using video games, it enhances student autonomy. But we have to be considering teachable moments. So when parents or administrators go, well, you're just letting them play video games. No, you're not. You're going through and you're finding those teachable moments and talking about them and teaching to them as they come up. In fact, the International Reading Association says that we need to spend more time talking about video games in media literacy because it's one of the most common things that students are using, particularly boys. You'll find more boys playing video games than you will on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. And I have to tell you a story with the next one. Next slide here once it moves forward. So video games have their own way of telling stories and challenging, and learning how to read a video game or playing a video game and really deconstructing the words, the pictures, the sounds, and all those things is an important skill to learn. In addition, being good digital citizens in the game world is an important skill to learn. My partner and my son are currently in a clan together on the video game Clash of Clans. And it's quite funny because as the game is going on, they're in a clan with our other friends and their son. And the amount of times that I'll hear, oh, Hunter, you need to make sure that you're sharing your resources, that you're not always asking for things, that you're giving things. That's how you teach digital citizenship. And he's 6. And that's how you start with something as low risk and fun as that. And so hopefully when he gets into Facebook and Twitter, he'll be good digital citizen, we hope. And finally, my little things, my little tips to you as you're beginning to start incorporating games or as you move forward. Always preview your games, obviously, because sometimes things come up and you're like, uh-oh. But also, there's these things on the web, on the internet, on the interweb, called walkthroughs, which is basically people have literally gone step by step what to do in the game. I print those out usually, but I also read through them to see, okay, well, what's going to happen in this game? What are the challenges? Is it appropriate for my kids? Because some games are more appropriate for others. I can divide games into different categories here, either playing to trigger learning or trigger something else, playing for learning or playing to extend. And it doesn't necessarily have to be one. So playing to trigger learning, something like I'll often use Plants vs. Zombies to get them writing about zombies. We make zombie menus, but we play Plants vs. Zombies in addition to doing some math stuff with it. But it triggers some ideas about something else. Playing for learning would be a game that we're using today, Machinarium, which is actually, they're using it as a novel rather than reading a novel. And then playing to extend. So this is where we teach some of the skills, or we're playing the game, but we're also learning about Canadian history and the lessons we learned in colonizing North America. How will that affect us in the game? And then they have to take that knowledge and extend it to the game and see what happens. It's a lot of fun. Always be explicit with learning expectations. I always, as geeky as it sounds sometimes, and ministry people would love this, but I always have my learning goals with video games because kids are in the habit, very often, of cheating. They automatically go to, oh, what are the cheat codes? How can I just, they'll go to the walkthroughs and try to bypass. But instead of going, no, we're trying to do this because we're learning how to work together on this task and problem solve. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen to this character. So being really clear with what your learning expectations are so they don't sway. Vary between what they know and what they don't know. This is one of the things James Paul G really talks about in that When you're doing media literacy and talking about video games, talk about games they're playing. Don't always go to the games they don't know. But I will also say that Machinarium is a game that most students don't know, and I choose that because it's a whole new, fresh experience. And sometimes that is something that's really meaningful too. And then finally, learn some slang. Kids are going to start talking video game talk, and you're going to have no clue what's going on. And that's why it's best to try to find some, there's definitely lots of websites out there to find what those different things mean, and so you know if they're appropriate or not. And last but not least, these things are the most amazing things that you can talk about as you are working with a video game. Listening to others and accepting feedback. So when I play a game, we'll play a game like Machinarium, and we'll do it as a group. And we'll each take turns 10 minutes to interact with the game. And we encourage the rest of the class to sit and watch and give feedback to the person, give some ideas. But then how you take those ideas, how you say, yes, that's a great idea, or no, I'm not going to take that idea right now, and then how you accept the person going, no, I'm not going to take it right now, are important skills to learn, and they really, really struggle, students at times, doing those things and taking turns at any level. So reviewing those things is a great time to do so. Now, I'm going to skip some parts here, but like I said, media literacy and gaming literacy are really important things to consider. So in a second, there will be a link off to the side. And what I want you to do is we're going to spend 2 minutes, and I did this in ripping it up too. There's the link to the document. We're going to put 2 minutes on the timer, and I want you to pick a box. It's a Google Doc. Pick a box in the table, and in 2 minutes list all the games from your childhood that you can. And once that timer is up, I wish I had like the racehorse music. Try to put as many games as you can into that box. And those of you that are starting, good for you. There we go, 2 minutes.
I'm going to actually open the document in the web tour just so that those of us who are just going to stay right here and watch it in Blackboard can see what's happening. Oh, hang on. Is the link in the chat working for everybody? I think maybe I just didn't grab the whole thing. There we go. Wow, look at how full it's getting.
So these don't have to just be video games. They could be board games too, card games, anything. So there's 57 seconds. Timer's about to go off, and when it goes off, you all better stop typing or you're cheating. I'm not being serious, by the way. Beautiful. So stop. Anonymous Coyote, stop. I don't know who any of you are, so I've got to go by your anonymous names, which I always enjoy. So we have this giant list of different types of video games. And they could all be split into different genres. So if you just scroll, you don't have to come back to Blackboard Collaborate, but down at the bottom of that document, I've actually added another table, and you'll see some yellow in that. And there's different types of genres. I actually do have a YouTube video, but just for the sake of time, we're not going to be able to watch it. But I do encourage you, and I beg you to go back and watch this video at some point, because one of my students put it together. And it is, I just posted the link above there. it is, he basically summarized what all these different types of video games are. And in the classroom, this is a perfect opportunity to start like dividing games into different categories. And if you do this at the beginning of the year, like, so these are all the different genres of games, similar to how we did different genres of novels, you could actually be able to figure out, if you don't know video games that well, you can figure out what all these different things are about. So that video, don't watch it now just because it's 9 minutes long. I told him he had 5 minutes, but whatever. Kind of summarizes all of those different types of genres. And the other thing I'll say about that video, because again, this is a student in a congregated behavior program. I had a proud dad feeling with it, even though it's not my son, but he actually composed a lot of the music for it. It was his first time using iMovie, so it was pretty darn impressive. So you could actually, with the students, then get them to copy and paste the different names of the games down into the box down below. We're not going to do that just because we're running out of time, and I want to make sure we spend a lot of time on Machinarium. So if you head on back to Blackboard, collaborate. And I'm going to continue on. Another thing that you can do is when you're talking about video game characters, I have a little, don't go to the OTF character link thing, but up above there, that hero machine, that is, if you just go to Google and type hero machine, it'll take you to this website where you can actually create a superhero, generate it, customize everything about it, and again, you can spend some time and deconstruct what a good character, or what a good video game character would be, and compare it to the game that you're playing. And so again, it's getting to some of the media literacy things that you may not have done before. So, without further ado, here's some tried and true games. I've never done this before in an online webinar, so I'm a little excited to see how it goes. I'm also a little freaked out to see how it goes. As we play the game, we're going to kind of go back and forth. As you play the game, you're going to be playing it on your own computer. We're going to go back and forth between the game and coming back to Blackboard Collaborate. And some of the things that we can talk about in the chat are what skills would help you with this game. So we're breaking it down: academic, social skills, whatever it is. What genre of the game, what kind of genre of the game would it be? Would it be classified as? How effective are the elements of the game? So we could talk about the music, the graphics, all those different things. What curriculum connections could you connect to this game? And there probably could be things outside of language that you could do. So either or, like curriculum related to science, related to language, whatever you think might work, let's put that into the chat. And what challenges might you encounter in your game when using this, in your classroom when using this game? So the game is Machinarium. And in a second, I'm going to give you, darn you, Louise, you get it. Now they're going to go to it before I explain what to do. It's a point-and-click game. So when you go to this website, it will load a flash kind of a screen. I believe it's flash. Thanks, Louise. And you're going to click on Play Game Demo. You're not going to click Download Full Game, because on their website is actually a demo of the game, and it will give us the first 3 levels to play for free. It is a game that costs money. I think it's, I forget how much it is, $9.99 or $6.99, but it's well worth it. It's an independent game company, so it's not a massive company like EA or any of the other ones, Microsoft, but it's just a guy in Europe that's created these games. And it's a point-and-click game. So you're going to use your mouse, and you're going to point and interact with the character and the different characters in the game and the screen and the things around you. Only things that serve a purpose can be interacted with. So if there's no purpose, if it's not going to help you solve the problem, it's not going to work. Sometimes Joseph, he's named after the creator of the robot, will shake his head. He doesn't want to do it. He's going to shake his head and go, and moving to the top of the screen will allow you to access some of the things that you collect. So without further ado, head off to that. And it's now 8:26. What I'm going to do is every about, so there's 3 levels. At the end of the level, so in the first level, you'll know you'll see the guy leave the screen. So when the screen changes and the background image and the setting changes, you know you're on a new level. Come back and maybe make a couple comments on the things that you see here. Also, I'm going to be posting some tips. So if you get stuck, every minute or so, I'm going to post part of a walkthrough to help you figure out how to solve the problem. Okay? So follow the link. It will open in the browser. And once it loads, you'll see Machinarium appear, and then you can say Play Free Demo. If you click on that, the game begins, and you'll see something flying out of the giant, looks like a city or a whatever, in the background. And if you need help, grab the microphone or even come back and ask a question in the chat. I'm here to help. I have beat the game. Shocking. And I'm willing to help. So again, as you play the game, and I know Louise mentioned turning down the volume, you will see if you just start clicking around the screen, and I tell my students, at first as you're learning the game, click everything if you need to. So you'll see Yosef's head sitting there, but you need to find the rest of his body. And so I'm going to begin to post some tips back in the chat. So this game is available for iPad. It is available for Android. It's available on most gaming systems, and online you could download it for your Mac or your PC. And like I said, this is the kind of game that I'll often even play and project onto a smartboard, and they can actually go up and use the smartboard to interact with it. So you got the head and you got the doll. Okay, so I think I may, yeah, I just posted the next thing about the small head. You're still missing an arm and a leg. Oh, I'll post the next part about, awesome. It's about the sniffer robot. Yeah, I agree, Mr. RG. The art and the music is unbelievable. And that's one of the things that so I just posted, those of you that are mentioning that you need an arm and a leg, I just posted the hint about where to get it. My students go crazy with this game, and you can purchase a stuffed version of Yosef, and they'll ship it to you, and it's quite cute. My students totally get into the art behind it and create their own Yosefs. I have not used Limbo, but I know exactly what game you're talking about. I have not used it yet. I believe it's one of the games that's on my list. kind of creepy looking. I'm not going to lie to you, Limbo. Here comes your next little clue. So one of the things this clue mentions is that there is hints that you can get in the game. So at the top of the screen, there's a little book, if I remember correctly, with a question mark in it, and there's also a thought bubble with a light bulb in it, and you can use that as to give you a little tip if you're stuck. So the doll should be in your inventory if you still have it. So when you go to the top, or you may have given it to the sniffer thing, and that is, and it should have given you your other leg. But if not, if you go back up to the top of the screen, your inventory should appear again. I love it. I like how we're all calling it a sniffer. So one of the other games at the end that I've included just in some of the other games that I've used is called Botanicula. And Botanicula is by the same design company, and very similar idea, but it has 5 different characters, and by the same point-and-click kind of adventure, and it has there's a lot of comparisons you can make to the environment and global warming and stuff. And so I alternate every couple of years. 1 year I do, just swallowed a magnet, that's not good. So I alternate between Machinarium and Botanicula, but the same type of game, same idea, and the same amount of engagement with a group of really challenging kids that you wouldn't expect to be in love with this little robot. And literally, I'm not lying, the stuffed animal Yosef that I had, we had to take turns holding on to it. These grade 7, 8 boys wanting to cuddle with Yosef. It was amazing, crazy at the same time, but quite fun, and they just totally get into the story. So I'm going to post another hint here. The next part, the missing arm, is often a challenge. I should give a hint like go fishing. Part of the reason why I'm posting the walkthrough is students know all about these walkthroughs, and for many of the games that they are using, they will go, then we play, they'll try to automatically go to these websites. So one of the activities that I've done is the procedural writing activity, where they do the step-by-step and they type out step-by-step how they went through in solving the problems. And we talk about the different words you can use and the language choice and where you should change into a new paragraph. Because it's something that, and then they want to put it out there in the world and they want to share it because people will go back and watch it. I'm in the railroad scene. Nice. So again, as you're playing the game with the students, or as the students are playing the game, it's always a perfect opportunity to talk about how, like bringing some of their problem solving to light. And so how did you know to do that? Why did you make that choice? Why do you think the character would choose that? How do you think the character might be feeling? All those different things are opportunities to kind of drive to the learning part of the game itself, because it's not just about the game, it's also about the teaching opportunities within it. So if everyone could just come back to Blackboard Collaborate for a second, and if you have gotten to the scene after he jumps over the river and has gone fishing, just give me a little check mark so I know where you are. So this would be, you're at the scene where you're at the gates to the castle. If you're not there yet, don't worry about it. And I should give you I will give you a tip, like Mr. RG said. So my tip for you would be, become a cone head in this level. So those of you that are still struggling, which I'm not going to lie to you, it happens, this game is hard. There's a couple places you need to get one of your body parts from the sniffer dog or the sniffer cat or whatever the heck it is. And you also need to grab the magnet, grab the string, put those string and the magnet together, and then go fishing. So you're going to knock down the looks like almost like a light thingy, light post. You're going to push it down with your leg, and then you put the rope and the magnet over top of it, and he'll throw it over, and then he'll grab his other arm and swing across. So I got to tell you, when I play these games and with my class and it's projected and I'm watching them try to solve the problems, it's so hard to decide when to give a tip, when to give a hint, and when to just sit back and listen. And I find that I've learned to just sit back and listen, and they do figure it out. And it always goes back to that pleasantly frustrating part. Where is that line? And even though they're beginning to get frustrated, they do like it. So we have 7 people who have said they've passed. So if you haven't got to that next scene, try those things. But when you do get to the scene where they're at the gates to the castle, give me a check mark back at the polling tool so I know where you are. We're going to play the game for about 6 more minutes. And if you leave the game and you're not paying attention, Yosef will start yawning and scratching his belly, as I just did. I just noticed myself. Oh, now his belly just dropped and he picked it back up. They've really worked a lot of fun little things in here. Jennifer, you have no idea how many times that happens to me where I start playing the game because, you know what, it's an excuse to play video games, really. And then you go, well, this is my planning. It's awesome when your planning is playing video games. And I can honestly say Machinarium and Botanicula are the 2 that sucked me in the most. And that's even above things like Plants vs. Zombies and all that stuff. So again, your hint for the castle stage is you want to become a cone head, but you need to be a blinking cone head. You want to make sure your cone is the right color. And you have to dig to find the paint. How was that, Mr. RG? Was that too specific? So one of the things that happens when you're playing games, And often when I do that 2-minute activity where we write down all the games we possibly can, it's amazing the memories that go with games of any sort. Because in your brain, there obviously is a chemical release that lets you know you have fun, dopamine. And for some reason, when you're having fun, you remember things better. And I always share a story about how I remember playing euchre as a child with my family, a super complex game of strategy. I was like 7 years old, but I can still remember the rules of this game, and I learned the rules of the game really quickly. So you can imagine what happens when you play these super engaging games and you talk about characters and you talk about settings. Some of these games we get into dystopian settings. This is a grade 7, 8 level. We talk about, like in my classroom, a congregated behavior classroom, we start doing activities that they would do in a gifted classroom, where we start creating our own dystopian worlds, or we talk about, we compare Machinarium to the Terminator, and how the story is different between Yosef's world and the world of the Terminator, because all my boys watch the Terminator. So there's so many different things that you can do, and yeah, and absolutely, Louise. The relationship building is huge. A lot of times when you talk to child youth workers or social workers or therapists, they talk about parallel talking. So when a kid is having a rough day, putting on a video game, playing the game, but then parallel talking about other things that are going on. Can you make any connections to this character? How do you think that character feels? It's almost kind of like a digitized version of play therapy. But as far as relationship building goes, it does really work well for my students to spend that time and do that. And it works well with any class for them to see you in a totally different light, and you can see them in a different light. So it's 8:43. Give you 2 more minutes to see how far you can get. I'm going to clear the screen, and don't worry if you're not this far, but if you're able to get into the castle, let me know. How do you get off the lamppost? You throw the magnet over with the rope, and then it should go down. It will get your arm, and then you go swinging across. Absolutely, Louise. I feel like a video game support group. So again, you should actually be able to, if you have the light bulb and you have the hat, you should also be able to put those together up in your inventory and then put the hat on your head. So then once the hat is together, you can put it back on the head. Jen, that's a really good point. One of my students did, he took different types of pipe and created a Machinarium character. Louise, don't ruin the fun for us. So yeah, so when you put the hat on its head, I was having this problem earlier. You need to move it around and click on different spots, and eventually it should go on. It's a little finicky at times. He wants it exactly properly on his head. He's a real particular robot. And I'll give you 1 more minute, then I'm going to get you to come back. Don't close the screen, because you can go back and play it later if you want. But again, it only gives you the first 3 levels. That's the beauty of a good demo. Now you're going to be sucked in, and you're going to have to go back and play it and buy it. And I'll be honest, it is a game that is well worth it. Oh, Louise, how many levels? I'll tell you in 1 moment. I believe... I don't know. Maybe 15, 20 levels in Machinarium. We I can't find it quickly. It does take a little while to to play it. It's not a single day game. Good job, Scott. I know you could do it. I knew you could do it. So just finish up what you're doing and come on back, and we can just finish up, and then we'll be done a little bit before 9 maybe, and you can go back and play it. And